It's the third Saturday in October. Bragging rights and the right to light up a cigar is on the line in Knoxville this weekend. So here to help us break down one of the biggest games of Saturday is Alex Scarborough from Bama 24/7 and Patrick Brown from GoVols 24/7. Guys, we get this meeting quite a bit, but let's tell you about this matchup. It is the 107th meeting. Alabama leads it by a lot. Certainly winning 16 of the last 17 helps that statistic, but the Vols did get the better of the Tide the last time out in Neyland in 2022. And on Saturday, this isn't on the graphic, but I just love to say it, it'll be two South Dakota natives leading two of the SEC's marquee programs in one of the SEC's marquee rivalries. Love that little fun play back and forth. I know those head coaches are definitely fond of each other too, but let's talk about just the state of these programs. Both of these teams, they're coming off of wins, but I think it's safe to say that neither feel all that good about them. So who needs this win more? Alex, start us off with the case for Alabama.
Yeah, it's not been a great few weeks for Alabama, obviously losing on the road at Vanderbilt a couple of weeks ago, and then really kind of sleepwalking through an 11 a.m. local game against South Carolina, where they jump out to a big 14-0 lead and then proceed to just try to give the game away. They couldn't stop South Carolina running the football. A couple of untimely turnovers by Jalen Milroe, some time of possession issues, some clock management issues. They got the wake-up call that they needed against Vanderbilt, pull out the win, but clearly a team looking to re-find itself and to rediscover that form they showed in that first half against Georgia, jumping out to a 28-0 lead, holding on to win the game. They've got to find a way to get back to that with one SEC loss on the season. Making it two could be really tough when you start looking at down the road games against Missouri and then on the road at LSU.
Yeah, Alex, Tennessee, I don't know if they watched the Alabama game, but they certainly almost they tried to emulate it later that night against Florida. And Florida's obviously been a tough team for Tennessee to beat in the past. But really, the last two games for Tennessee have looked very similar to each other. Offensive struggles, different parts of the offense not getting the job done on this play and the next play, but the defense has risen to the occasion. The defense has given up some yards and has given up some big plays, but they're not giving up a lot of points on the scoreboard because they're getting stops in the red zone and getting fourth down stops. There were a couple of fourth down stops in the first half against Arkansas 2 weeks ago in that loss. They had a couple in the first half, I believe, against Florida as well. I think one maybe actually in the second half. But Florida got in the red zone 6 times and had scored 2 touchdowns and kicked a field goal. So Tennessee was bending but not breaking, and they kept Tennessee in the game long enough for the offense to finally come around and put some points on the board in the second half. And after they couldn't hold the lead in the fourth quarter, were able to get it done in overtime. So it's sort of a unique situation going into this game because it seems like Alabama's struggling a little bit on defense, and Tennessee, for as much as they've done under Josh Huepel on offense, they're really struggling on that side of the football. So this is a chance to try to put everything together and see if you can get another rivalry win in back-to-back weeks for Tennessee.
Definitely some sweaty finishes from both of those teams, keeping the fans on their toes there. But we also have a really good quarterback matchup. I mean, 2 very talented QBs in Jalen Milroe and Nico Iamaleava, but also 2 guys who aren't necessarily happy with the way that they've been playing the last couple of games. I know that, Patrick, you detailed that a little bit. So how does Nico and this offense find its groove again?
Well, Emily, the issues for Tennessee's offense aren't just on the quarterback, although I will say there were probably more things wrong with Nico Iamaleava's performance against Florida than against Arkansas. The pass protection has been an issue. You saw Tennessee roll Nico out, move the pocket a little bit more last week against Florida. They had some guys open downfield for some big plays and just weren't able to make those connections. And those were big moments in those games. I mean, if you hit on 2 or even just one of those downfield shots where you had a guy open behind the defense, it's a different game. Tennessee maybe wins it in regulation, and everybody's feeling better about the offense. But and they started that game well, too. The opening drive for Tennessee was looking really good until Nico fumbled a mesh point with Dylan Sampson for a turnover, and it almost seemed like he was a little bit shaky after that. On that drive, he had a play on a 3rd and 6 where he had good protection. Tennessee picked up a blitz. He looked to one side of the field, nothing was open, came back across the middle and threw a dart for a completion and a conversion. And then later on in the first half, a play pretty much the same kind of carbon copy of that play. He stayed locked in on one side of the field and forced a throw into coverage where there were multiple defenders for an easy interception that Florida was unable to turn into points just before half. So he's a young quarterback that I think is still kind of growing. He's still kind of seeing how to read defenses and read the field. I think he's been affected a little bit by some of the pressure, although I thought it was better last week against Florida. And as I mentioned, they're trying to roll him out, move the pocket a little bit to try to take some of those things away and make things a little bit easier for him. But he's just a young quarterback that's trying to put it all together. And there's been some ups and downs so far in his first season as Tennessee's starting quarterback.
Yeah, it's another interesting parallel in this game because Milroe has, I think, regressed since that first half against Georgia, where a lot of people were starting to call him a first-round type pick at that position, not a young quarterback like Nico, but a guy with not a ton of experience when you talk about only having 1 year starting under his belt before this year. Started out the season really strong. As I said, early in that Georgia game, he couldn't do any wrong. But these last two games against Vanderbilt and against South Carolina, thrown some interceptions, had 3 interceptions, 6 sacks, and really some bad decision-making against Vanderbilt. Had an illegal forward pass that brought back a pretty big chunk play. And then against South Carolina, evaded some pressure in the end zone that probably wasn't really there, ran himself into a sack and tried to avoid it, threw the ball away, intentional grounding, and you have a safety and 2 points on the board for South Carolina that really started the snowball effect in that game. So no, the issues are not all Jalen Milroe's, but he's also got to pick up his game a little bit, especially going on the road against Tennessee. And it will really help to see the pass protection for Alabama step up in that respect. It was not strong against South Carolina, who has 2 really good edge rushers, but they're going to see that again with James Pierce being a potential number 1 pick, rushing the quarterback for Tennessee. Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett, the 2 tackles starting for Alabama, have to find a way to protect Jalen, and then Jalen then in turn needs to find a way to protect the football and make good decisions on the road.
At some point during the season, both of these quarterbacks have had a lot of hype, and they both kind of come back down to earth a little bit. But, of course, it's not all on the quarterbacks. That's just the job, right? There is a matchup, though, that everybody needs to keep their eye on in this one, and that's Alabama, who has the 54th rush defense in the country, but the Vols have the 7th best rushing offense. So just looking kind of big picture about how that will play a factor in this one, Patrick, where do you see it kind of manifesting itself in this game and Tennessee taking advantage of that mismatch?
Emily, we just spent a lot of time talking about the issues for Tennessee's offense. One issue that hasn't been an issue is Dylan Sampson. He has played at a very high level so far this season. The passing game can't seem to get past 200 yards through the air, but Sampson is still he's got 5 100-yard rushing games this season, including the last 2. He's got 15 touchdowns, which I believe is second most nationally. He had 3 last week against Florida. And Tennessee's riding him. I think he had 29 touches on about 60, almost 70 plays last week against the Gators. So he's having to carry a heavy workload because he's the most reliable part of the offense right now. And he's a very dynamic running back. He's really good when he gets to the second and third level of the defense. If the offensive line can spring him there, he's able to make linebackers and safeties miss in the open field. He's got the acceleration and the shiftiness to put some moves on. But I think he's really improved over the course of his career running between the tackles. He's not the biggest guy, but you constantly see him sort of bouncing off of tacklers or spinning off of tacklers. He's really good at knowing where defenders are coming from, where he's going to get hit and sort of spinning off of it. And he's got some, he's pretty powerful in the lower body, able to push the pile and has good body lean and balance control to stay up and fall forward and push piles. And I think that's been an area where maybe he's been maybe a little bit better than Tennessee is expected. But again, as big a workload as he can handle, they're going to keep riding him just because he keeps getting the job done. He's got a great nose for the end zone. He's able to convert in short yardage, but he's also able to rip off some bigger chunk runs if he's able to get past the offensive line, if the blocking up front can get him to the second and third level.
Yeah, I think this is the position battle that really is going to make Alabama defensive coordinator Kane Womack sweat a little bit. He was asked on Monday about potentially playing more dime package to account for what Tennessee likes to do, putting 4 receivers on the field, splitting them wide out and really stressing the box. And his counter to that was, well, Tennessee really likes to run the football and they have a really good running back. And oh, by the way, this is something Alabama has struggled with. I mean, when would you have said under a Nick Saban defense that Alabama would be in the 50s in terms of rush defense when teams have committed to running the football? South Florida, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, where Alabama did not jump out early as an offense and teams could do that. They have struggled. They have struggled in terms of execution. They have struggled in terms of run fits. They have struggled in terms of tackling. And that all should add up when you're talking about a brand new defense, the 4-2-5 under Kane Womack coming in after 17 years of the same Nick Saban defense. But those growing pains are there, and they're real, and Alabama needs to find a way to get over them because Sampson can be the one to expose them, especially when you're talking about personnel up front, when talking about Alabama's defensive line in particular, that has not quite been up to the standard of Alabama football that we've seen. Some strong players in terms of Tim Keenan, Tim Smith, James Smith up front, but not necessarily game wreckers in the interior. I think it's going to be really incumbent on the inside linebackers, Deontay Lawson and Jahad Campbell, to make tackles in space. But also, I think we should expect safeties Keon Sadd and Malachi Moore to really have to come down and make some really game-saving tackles in this game because they're going to be put on the spot.
Definitely a lot of weirdness in this game, right? I mean, we see from the Alabama side, you just laid out how it's interesting to see an Alabama team so low in the country in rush defense. And then, of course, Tennessee is coming off of back-to-back games where they haven't scored in the first half under Josh Huepel. There's just a lot of strangeness in this one. But we wanted to see what it might look like virtually. So we simulated it 20 times on EA College Football 25. And Alabama on the road came out on top 13 of those 20 times. So for each team, let's go ahead and start with the virtual victors. Alex, what's the biggest key to pulling out a win in this real football game on Saturday?
I think you're seeing it right there. I don't think Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, and the Alabama run game has necessarily been there through this season consistently. I think going on the road, if you want to take the pressure off of your offensive tackles and Tennessee's pass rush, if you want to take the pressure off of Jalen Milroe to have to make every big play, and you want to take the pressure off of that defense to be on the field for long stretches of time, which is what has happened a lot this season, running the football is a very good place to start. It's not a sexy thing to say. I understand that. It's not the most important part of this team when you're talking about the strengths, but we haven't seen a breakout performance from that two-headed monster with Miller and Haynes. And I think this Saturday might be the perfect time to do that because it relieves the pressure on all parts of the team.
Alex, it's October, so I'm going to go with a baseball analogy, and I think the team that hits the most home runs and limits the most home runs is going to be the one enjoying the victory cigars come Saturday night. And for Tennessee's offense, they've kind of wandered in the wilderness over the past couple of games. They're thirsting for success. If you can hit some of those downfield shots that they missed last week against Florida, that can be a real quencher for what you need. It can provide energy for your stadium. It can put you in position to score points. If you don't score touchdowns, at least get down the field and have a chance to capitalize in the red zone. And defensively, we haven't talked much about Tennessee's defense. That's really been the story of the season for the Vols, but they're doing a great job defending the big plays. They're giving up some 20-plus yard plays, but I think only 3 30-plus yard plays on the season and just one 40-plus yard play. Alabama obviously has some explosive playmakers on the offense. We know Jalen Milroe can stretch the field vertically. They've got some good playmakers on the outside. So if Tennessee can limit those, and I think the reason they've been good is they've been able to give themselves a chance. The more times, the more plays you have to defend, the better chances you have to get sacks, tackles for loss, turnovers, fourth down, third down stops. Those are the reasons Tennessee's been successful, is they've been able to generate a lot of those things. So if they're able to keep Alabama from going over the top or busting a big run, I think they've got a chance to continue to do what they've been doing. They've been living on the edge and giving up some yards and letting teams drive down the field, but in the key moments in the red zone on fourth down, they've been coming up and making those plays. And this is the first time since 1969 that Tennessee's opened the season in their first 6 games allowing 20 points or less. So they're playing at a really high level, really an historic level. And if they're going to keep that up, they've got to keep Alabama from hitting any home runs over the top. And if they can hit some on offense, then they might have a second straight win at Neyland against Alabama to celebrate.
Yeah, based on the way these offenses and defenses are playing, I'm not sure if we'll get that same 52-49 type score that we saw the last time these two teams played at Neyland Stadium. But either way, this one is going to be awesome. It always is. Thank you both so much for breaking it down for us. Keep it locked in to Bama 24/7 for all things Alabama football, and Go Vols 24/7 for everything you need to know about Tennessee.